was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. It was the best. It was the best. It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. It was the best. You stupid monkey.
2019 is definitely the year that someone at EA purchased way too much neon and had to get rid of it before it expires in 2020. Similar to this season's release of FIFA, Need for Speed Heat is loud, brash, and aggressively styled. There's more neck tattoos, shiny rims, funky haircuts, and unnecessary spoilers present here than you can poke an avocado latte at.
Mr. Leo, he's a fashion consultant for the Army.
But thank you, Agent. I'm just very happy to be here. I want to tell you something. You know, this whole camouflage thing for me doesn't work very well. Why is that? Well, because you go in the jungle, I can't see you. You know, it's like wearing stripes and plaid. For me, I want to do something different. You know, you go in the jungle, make a statement. If you're going to fight, clash.
Need for Speed is supposed to be a franchise all about illegal street racing and evading the cops. But it's hard to feel like either one of those are actually that important to the overall experience of Heat. The story in the single player mode drops like a dull thud, and it's probably about as engaging as a sensationless driving. We'll get to that later. You're supposed to believe that this is a city of cops on the ragged edge waiting to take out their vengeance on the local street racing hooligans, but it would not be possible to care any less about the outcome of this story. You don't need any of the context of the story to know that street racing equals bad, equals cops. The game is pretty straightforward. Daytime races equals good, you race on closed circuits, and wins provide you with cash to spend on new vehicles and parts for the car. Nighttime races equals bad, mostly done on open roads and with an increased potential to attract unwanted attention from the cops. Wins at night will earn you rep, which allows you to unlock those cool cars and parts. Only the story missions will get you both rep and cash, which means you'll double the amount of racing you'll have to do to get access to the upgrades you need, which feels like the almost literal definition of grinding. Now, damage to your car only seems to matter once the cops are involved. Have a head-on collision at 140 miles an hour? No problem. But a cop running alongside you that gives you a little nudge, all of a sudden you have critical damage to your vehicle, which can result in your arrest, costing you cash and damage to your reputation. I honestly don't mind either way, but you have to pick one of the options. You can't make damage different just because the cops have flicked their lights on. Now, once you've evaded the cops and returned to your safe house at the end of the day, all of the damage you've done to your car gets magically fixed up by the magical car mechanic man.
Oh, look at me. I'm making people happy. I'm the magical man from Happy Land in a gumdrop house on Lollipop Lane. Oh, by the way, I was being sarcastic.
Heat also has what can be best described as reverse GTA tree physics. Instead of stopping you dead like a steel-reinforced concrete pylon, you wouldn't even know the foliage was there. Trees, fences, road barriers, concrete walls, all of it may as well be butter to a hot knife. You'll notice little to no impact to your overall driving experience, regardless of the route that you take.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yes, they have done this before in games like Forza Horizon, however it feels more extreme in this instance. You'll plough through the poorly textured environment in relatively straight lines to get to your destinations just because you can, and it's quicker. Now, speaking of the poor textures, this game looks terrible. The cars look average, the simulated damage on your vehicles is iffy, the character animations are subpar at best, and the entire game just feels washed out. The overall impression is that somebody made a first pass at this and then didn't come back to finish it up. It literally looks like they pulled the cake out of an oven half done. Now let's talk about the driving. The cornerstone of any racing game. Driving here is awful. It's absolutely no fun. The game is focused entirely too much on the drifting mechanic, which is also terrible. If you're not interested in drifting, which should be entirely optional for these types of games, then this game is not for you. It's absolutely something that should be included in the game, but not to the exclusion of all else. Your car feels like it's mostly driving on air, and often the speed at which you're driving is completely at odds with the sounds that your engine is making. Drifting actually gives you a speed boost in this game, which will help you pull ahead of your rivals during the racing, but will do absolutely nothing to lose the police during a pursuit. It's next to useless during the nighttime races because you won't be able to drift through the long sweeping corners because there's actual regular traffic on the roads at that time. Now, the way that drifting is set up, it's possible to go around every track without once using your brakes. If you're coming in too hot, just turn and feather the gas, and the drift will kick in and propel you through the corner, no worries. All that's required here is more speed. If you're trying to escape from the cops, you know, that thing that this game was supposed to be all about, well, this game has removed almost all the fun out of making that happen. A police car in pursuit may as well be sitting in your boot. There is next to nothing you can do to shake them off your tail other than to ram them off the road. Or, as I've discovered, you just drive into the water. What happens is you'll respawn out of the water, but because the cops are practically part of your car during the chase, they will crash and not come back. It's a bug in the core of the game and, well, probably won't be resolved anytime soon. Overall, this game is a complete mess. It feels unfinished, and I'm not sure what deadline they had to meet, but it doesn't seem to be worth it in the slightest. It's rare that you find a game where almost every element of it is broken just slightly, but in vastly different ways. It's kind of like a Frankenstein's monster of racing games, having elements of other better games being stuck on here, knowing that the pieces were required, but not fully understanding what they needed to do to execute them. With the availability of many other satisfying and much more polished racing games, both arcade and sim style, Need for Speed Heat feels like it's a year late and a few dollars short. It's somewhere in between the experience of Forza Horizon 4 and the remastered Burnout Paradise, but somehow it's less than the sum of those parts. For more on Need for Speed Heat and other games, subscribe now to Shaken Not Nerd on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or subscribe to our podcast on your nearest podcast.
Maybe even a little curious.